We are live, everyone. So my name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And of course, there are no classrooms right now. You guys are out of school, so we really appreciate you continuing to tune in on YouTube as we showcase the coolest scientists, explorers, and amazing facilities across the globe. So today, we are joined again from the beautiful Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida, in the lovely Florida Keys, where we wish we all were right now. And so the Turtle Hospital for over 30 years has been rescuing, rehabilitating, and re-releasing injured sea turtles. And so today we are joined by Teresa there, who's going to take us on a little walkthrough of the hospital, learn a little bit about what they do, and we look very forward to your questions at the end. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today, Teresa, and take it away.
Hi, guys. So we're going to jump right in with one of our patients here. His name is Aldo Leopold. And so typically, our turtles get named by the people that find them, which is why some of our turtles you'll see will have some very interesting names. But the family that found Aldo were from Wisconsin, and Aldo Leopold, a famous conservationist from Wisconsin. So it kind of fits, kind of goes right along with what we do here. But Aldo here, he's about 100-pound green sea turtle. So a little bit on the larger side. Not really large for a green sea turtle. Greens will get to be about 500 pounds. So he'll get a lot bigger. But that's still a long way off. But he is a green sea turtle. They're the most common species of sea turtles that we see here at the hospital. And you might think he's called the green turtle because he's green. But he's not green, he's brown. But these turtles are primarily herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here they get some romaine lettuce, some peppers, cucumbers, all sorts of green stuff, but they eat so much of that green stuff that their fat, their insides turn green, which is how they get their name. But Aldo came in on leap day. So just a little bit over a month, he was found floating. And so floating in sea turtles is not normal, not a good sign. Because the only time they're ever up at the surface is supposed to be when they're breathing. But the rest of the time, they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So they saw him floating, knew something wasn't right, and they called us. And then we have an ambulance, we'll go pick that turtle up. That's actually how we get most of our turtles, is from people that just see these turtles just not behaving normally. So we brought him in, we did x-rays and blood work, and a little physical, everything, the same thing happens when you first go to the doctor. Turns out he'd eaten some stuff he wasn't supposed to, and his intestines got all blocked up. He was constipated and gassy, which isn't comfortable for us, definitely not comfortable for them, but give them the different medications to help get their plumbing moving again, get rid of that gas. We tend to use the same thing we use for people. Lactulose, metamucil, Beano, Gas-X, and typically takes a couple weeks. So now, a month later, he is doing much better, finally able to sit flat on the bottom. But this has only been about a week that he's been able to be flat, so he still has to be off meds for a little while longer, because we have to make sure that he really is completely healthy, not just the meds masking the symptoms. But as long as he continues to do great, then he'll get to be released. Hopefully not too much longer. Hopefully just a few more weeks. But there's his little pepper. You see he's eating really well. A nice little bite out of it. But especially with green sea turtles, they tend to be grazers in the wild. Because they don't exactly have set meal times. They don't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So even though we feed them twice a day here, sometimes they like to leave a little snack for later. But right now he's just taking a little nap, and that's okay. They tend to sleep a lot, especially when they're sick or recovering. They're just like us. So we'll leave him to his nap. We'll see if Johnny is awake. This is Johnny. He's only been here about 3 weeks. Now he is a loggerhead sea turtle. They're the other common species that we get down here. And the loggerheads get their name because they have a really large head. And so he's about 75 pounds. So a little bit smaller than Aldo, but still gets eventually to be about 400 pounds. But he came in floating, very weak, very lethargic, kind of skinny, but he was just a mess. And we're not completely sure why. Nothing has been definitive. So it doesn't have an impaction like Aldo. It's not really much in his intestines. And at this point, he's kind of pooping normally, which is a good sign. His blood work's a little bit low, but nothing too severe, nothing we can pinpoint. So I don't really know what's going on with him. So we're pretty much just treating the symptoms. So he's finally eating. He's great at eating on his own, but we're still supplementing him with IV nutrition. He's getting antibiotics, fluids, everything that he needs. But for most of the day, he pretty much just sleeps. But that's okay. That's all he really needs to do at this point is sleep. Once he starts feeling better, that's when he'll start getting more and more active, and then he'll start waking up for longer periods. But for right now, he's just sick. He just needs that chance to rest and to heal. And we're going to give him that. But he's doing really, really well. It's a lot better than he was a couple weeks ago. But he's still got a long way to go ahead of him. Probably at least a couple months. But we don't know for sure. It depends on him and how he does. We'll leave him to we'll find some little beings that are awake. So we've met a couple of bigger guys, but they all start out little. So this is little Dory. She's, what, 7 pounds? She's a little green sea turtle. She's in here with Moana and Nemo. All right around 5 to 7 pounds. They're all on the smaller side, which means they're only about 2 to 3 years old. Because with sea turtles, they don't have growth rings like a tree. You never know exactly how old they are, just kind of your best guess as to their size. But sea turtles never stop growing. So the older the turtle, the larger they are. So you can say Aldo's probably 15, 18 years old, whereas these guys are only about 2 to 3 years old. And average lifespans, about 70 to 100 years. So pretty long time. But these little guys, they were transferred to us from Northeast Florida back about not quite a month and a half ago, back at the end of February, because they had stranded up there, kind of washed up on the beach, just very weak, lethargic, but also lots of growth on their shell, lots of algae, lots of barnacles, which typically is a sign that they've been floating for a long time. Let's see. Little Nemo, who's the one currently up top right there, who looks looking really, really good. When he came in, that's what he looked like. So looked otherwise pretty healthy, but lots of barnacles on the back end of his shell, which that amount of barnacles doesn't grow overnight. So he had been floating for at least a few weeks, if not closer to a month or longer. So brought him in. We have to clean up all of those barnacles. That's why some of these guys, their shells look a little patchy, but pretty much giving them a chance to get stronger, give that shell a chance to heal. So we ended up getting 12 of these little guys. We had those 3 over here. We also have Nani, Ariel, Squirt, Sebastian, Maui, Hey Hey. And you might notice a common theme to these 12 names. They're all named after Disney movies. Because when we get a bunch like this, we still want to be able to tell them apart individually, so they all get their own names, but we also want to refer to them collectively as a group, so we pick a category. This time we decided on Disney movies. One time we decided on Gilligan's Island. So we had Gilligan, Skipper, Marianne, Professor, Mr., and Mrs. Howell. But they don't care. they're not like dogs. They don't respond to their names. Their names are really just for us. But this has happened the past few years. They're kind of February, March rolls around. They'll get these little juvenile greens that strand on the northeast coast of Florida. But when they get a lot of these turtles, the facilities up there can't take care of them. So they kind of move them around a little bit. And these guys are doing very well, doing much better than they were. They're all eating on their own, starting to do much better with their medication. So starting to cut back a little bit on some of them. But they'll be with us, some of them as little as just a few more weeks, some maybe a couple months. But once they are completely healthy, we're going to take a nice little road trip back up to where they were found, and then they get released. Because we always try to release them close to where they were found, so that way they know where they are. Because they're not like some animals where they maintain a territory. They're not always in the same area, but they do have patterns that they like to keep to. So they'll go back to the same areas at different times. So where they came from, where they're kind of used to be, so they'll go back up there. So they'll never know they were actually in the Keys, which is kind of sad thing, because one of the great things about being down here is that it is beautiful. And it's why we get so many sea turtles, is because they like it where it's nice and warm. Great thing about the Keys, it stays pretty nice and warm all year round. And so we have lots and lots of ocean, which means we have lots and lots of turtles. And luckily we are right here on that ocean. So if you ever get that boater who finds that turtle, if they're close enough, they can come right here to our docks and drop them off themselves. And a couple times throughout the years, we've actually had turtles kind of check themselves in and kind of end up right here in our little basin, which made it really easy to go rescue them because we didn't have to go anywhere. That's always a good thing. Okay, so let's see, who else patient-wise do we want to see today? Let's see, is Maisie? Maisie's thinking about waking up. Maisie is one of our patients here, and she's really cool. She is actually a hybrid. So hybrids are one of those things that do happen. Not something that's super common, but it's not exactly completely rare either. And so she is part green sea turtle, but also part hawksbill. And so hawksbills are one of the more critically endangered of the species. We don't see them very often because the hawksbills are the ones that have that very pretty tortoiseshell pattern on their shell. So prior to the Endangered Species Act, so prior to 1973, anything made out of tortoiseshell, like jewelry and glasses, all made out of hawksbill's turtle shell. And so now, because that's illegal, their populations are coming back, which is taking a very long time. So she's kind of a little bit of both, which makes her really, really pretty. But she came in because she had tumors, which is a virus that these sea turtles get primarily in the green sea turtles, but it has been found in all the different species. But it's a virus called fibropapilloma, we tend to call FP for short, but it causes tumors to grow on the soft tissues. So Maisie, when she came in, that's what she looked like. She had little growths all over her neck, her flippers, her eyes, pretty much anywhere that there's soft tissue, which makes it very hard for these turtles to see or to swim, because it just weakens their overall body condition. So they have to come in and we can do surgery, and then they'll stay for a while, give us a chance to get them stronger, make sure they build up the antibodies, build up the immunity to that virus, and then they're able to be released. So Maisie, just recently tumor-free. She is doing so much better, but she's still on medications. She's still healing. So she has to wait a little while longer before she's able to be released. But those are some of our patients, and we do have 48 turtles in total. So most of them are patients. So those are the ones that get to hang out in their own individual tanks for the most part, because we have to make sure they're not going to cross-contaminate or be contagious or get anybody else sick. So When we can, we try to keep them by themselves. But we also have our big pool here. This is where our non-releasable turtles live. Because yes, we want to be able to release as many turtles as we can, but we can't release a sea turtle if they're not going to be able to survive on their own. So when that happens, they get to stay here. They get this really nice 160,000 gallon tidal pool. It's connected directly to the ocean, so it is tidal, and it even has little fish that can come in and out through the grates with the tides. And it's also managed to get some larger fish. So sometimes the little fish come in, stay for the free food, and realize that they like it here and they don't want to leave. So then we end up with some big fish too. But the fish just help keep it more like a natural environment. Because even though these turtles may have to be in captivity, doesn't mean that they have to be in a tiny tank forever. That's not always very fair to them. So once they're healthier, they can be in here. But sea turtles do not know the meaning of social distancing. In the wild, they are solitary, so they don't travel in groups. Finding Nemo lied to everybody. So they don't meet their parents, they don't go traveling with parents together. So when they're here and they need to be by themselves, they're okay with that. And when we need to keep them together, they just ignore each other. But these guys, these are non-releasable because they have what's known as bubble butt syndrome, which is what happens when they get hit by a boat. The force of that boat strike causes air to get trapped, and it causes nerve damage and sometimes spinal cord damage and paralysis, especially to their rear flippers and their tail. But pretty much it means that these turtles end up floating. It's called bubble butt syndrome after the original bubble butt. He got his name because his butt floats. A very fitting name there. And that floating is not a good thing, which is why they cannot be released. So they get to stay here. We just try to make it a little bit more comfortable for them here. So we attach lead weight to the outside of their shells. So that way when they want to, they can go down to the bottom and go to sleep, but they don't have to. But eventually the weights do fall off. So even with the weights, and they may be good temporarily, they cannot be released with those weights because once the weights fall off, they're back to floating. And once you release a sea turtle, they're not ever coming back, especially not for a checkup. And so some will always stay here, but some will end up at zoos or aquariums, because it's the only way for a zoo or an aquarium to get a sea turtle, because they are a protected species. You can't just go out into the ocean and take one because you want one. And so, like right now, even though we're all trying to like stay safe at home and take care of ourselves, we still come in, we have to take care of these turtles. So don't worry about any of that because they're still getting everything that they need, food, medication, wound care, and even virtual vet visits. So it's not always easy to have them come in right now either. Okay, time for questions.
Sure, fantastic, Teresa. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing such a great tour around the Turtle Hospital. We really appreciate it. So yes, we've got dozens of people tuning in online. So for anyone watching live, just type in questions in the chat bar on the right and let me know where you're joining from so we can see where the questions are pouring in from. But first, we've got a question from Maya. Do all of your turtles eat the same thing, or are some picky and want certain things?
Well, kind of. So the green sea turtles, these are the ones that are the primarily herbivores. So they eat lots of the veggies, the romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, cucumbers, occasionally broccoli, but some of them don't really like broccoli. When they're sick, the greens will also sometimes get fish and squid because sometimes they need extra protein. But the loggerheads, like we met Johnny, and let's see if Rebel is still awake. Rebel's another one of our loggerheads. The loggerheads are carnivores. He's thinking about coming up. But the loggerheads are carnivores. So in the wild, they eat crab, lobster, conch, anything with that hard shell. When they're here, they get squid, fish, shrimp, kind of whatever they like to eat. And we actually have one of our more picky turtles She is in our main pool here. Her name is Bender. She is our only Kemp's Ridley. The Kemp's Ridleys are also known as the ghost turtles because they're much lighter in color than everybody else. But she also likes to be like a ghost, but she's also very shy. But she's another carnivore, so in the wild she eats small crab and small crustaceans. Here, she will only eat shrimp stuffed squid. She's slightly spoiled, that one. Which I was hoping she'd come up to say hi, but I don't think she's feeling it today.
Yeah.
Rebel decided to come up.
Did you say shrimp stuffed squid?
Yep, we take the squid and we stuff it with shrimp.
That is very gourmet. Thanks, Teresa. All right, Stephen joining in Jacksonville, Florida, wanted to know what happens if a turtle comes out of the water? What happens if they're on land?
Well, with sea turtles, the only time in the wild that they're ever out of the water is nesting or hatching. Because that's why they're built with flippers, because they're built to swim. So they're a little bit different than the turtles you may be used to, like freshwater turtles and land turtles. But being out of the water for a little while is okay, because they have to be able to come up out of the water to nest. So a few hours, they're fine. If it's going to be more than a few hours, then we'll just rub them down with Vaseline. So that way, even though they're out of the water, they're not going to get dehydrated or dried out, which is a good thing, because if we had to try to do surgery or give meds underwater, that would not work out very well.
Not one bit. Thank you so much, Teresa. All right. Ethan wanted to know, are the white bars in Dory's swimming area to help them practice their swimming? What are the white bars for?
Kind of. So the main pool, we don't really give them any of that because that's a more natural area. So they don't need any toys. But we call them toys, but they're enrichment devices. Like Noel here, she has one too. And so some of them are kind of like bars, some are squares or cubes or triangles, some look more like tables, but it's pretty much a way to help kind of break up the monotony of the tank, give them some enrichment, because they may not play like you're used to. They don't play fetch. They're not going to play with each other, but they do like the chance to be able to hide, especially when they're sleeping. They like to hide up underneath something, and they do like to scratch their shells. They can feel things on their shell. Think about rubbing your fingernail. Now you can feel that. Well, that's what they feel. So we like to be able to give them stuff that they can play with. And when they first come in and they're very sick, like Johnny doesn't get any because he's not strong enough yet. But once they start feeling better, doing much better, then they can start getting toys. And we like the PVC pipe because you can put it in pretty much whatever configuration you need. It's not going to scratch up our tanks, and it's PVC pipe. It's very easily cleaned.
Perfect. All right. Pam from Oshawa, Ontario wanted to know, have you ever found a turtle with a broken shell?
Yes. And so that shell is bone. And time for Noel to get some eye drops. Noel's not going to be very happy here at the moment. Oh, she didn't fight on that one. Because that shell is bone. So yes, it can be damaged, especially like most of our bubble butt turtles. They have a lot of scars on their back from those boat strikes. But it does heal. It's like if you break your arm, it heals. You have to wear a cast for a couple months, but it does heal. But these turtles will always have a scar. So they won't look perfect, but that's okay. But Noel, when she came in, she had tumors. Yeah. And so she's doing much better. She's already had a couple surgeries. She still needs one more. But she also had tumors on top of her eyes. So we have a veterinary ophthalmologist that we take them to remove those eye tumors. You always have to be very careful around the eyes, which now that she's had surgery, she gets eye drops in those eyes to help them heal and try to help slow down the rate of regrowth. So she'll be out of water for about 10 to 15 minutes. Let those kind of eye drops soak in.
Huh.
Because if we put her back in water right away, they would just rinse right out and it wouldn't do any good whatsoever. It's like putting sunscreen on and jumping right in the swimming pool. It needs a chance to soak in a little bit. So she'll be out of water for about 10-15 minutes. Let it soak in. While she's out, gives us a chance to clean her tank. So she'll go back in. Nice new clean tank. And she'll be good.
Nice. How cool was that to see that whole process? That was very neat. All right, Ben, who's 5, wants to know, how deep do turtles usually live in the water?
Well, it kind of depends. Most of them are going to be a little bit on the shallower side. So, like our pool here, it is tidal. It's about 8 to 12 feet deep. So they do fine. Most of the time, these turtles are going to be within the first maybe 100, 150 feet. They might go a little bit deeper than that, but they do have to come up to the surface to breathe. So the deeper they go, the quicker they have to come up to breathe. Because even though they can hold their breath for a long time, when they're sleeping, it's up to about 5 hours. But longer they're down, the more they have to come up. But they're also going to go where their food is. So they're not going to just go deep just for fun. They're not going to take selfies down there and say, hey, look how deep I got today. They're going to go where their food is. So especially these greens, they're going to go where there's plants. So that's where it's light. They're relatively shallow. Same thing for the loggerheads. They're going to go where the crab and the lobster are. Now, the largest of the sea turtles, the leatherbacks, they get to be up to about 2,000 pounds, which is why it's kind of a good thing. You don't see them very often here, because I can't imagine trying to take care of something that large. They don't like being in the keys. The keys are too shallow for them. But they are massive. Think of the size of a Volkswagen Bug. And so because they are so big, they like to spend most of their lives a lot further offshore. They like being in the deeper waters. Leatherbacks can dive to depths up to about 4,000 feet, which is crazy.
That is
and
crazy.
they can dive to 4,000 feet and back up in a little bit over an hour. But they do that because they eat jellyfish. These giant animals eat jellyfish, which are like 90% water. Crazy. But the jellyfish go up and down in the water column, so the leatherbacks do too.
Very cool. I'm so glad whenever we get leatherback stories in, it's so neat. When we have live classrooms, typically, I like to say that an entire classroom of grade 5 students is about what one leatherback would weigh. So it's quite the amazing animal. Check it out if you guys haven't seen one live at home. All right, we're going to take a couple more questions. So we've got a bunch of questions around the theme of what eats turtles. And then specifically, William and Sabri wanted to know, would loggerheads eat green sea turtles if they had the chance or not?
Well, loggerheads may be carnivores, but they are not cannibals. So they're not going to go after other turtles. They don't even typically in the wild go after fish, because most fish are pretty fast. Loggerheads are going to stick with the hard-shelled invertebrates, the crab, the lobster, the conch, things like that. Now, as to what eats sea turtles, that of course depends on the size of the turtles. Our largest turtle right now is Boo. She's about 300 pounds, but she's not up at the top right now. So next largest is Rebel, who's still up at the top. So Rebel's about 240 pounds. So not exactly a little turtle, which means not much at this size is going to eat him. Because especially with sea turtles, the bigger they get, the safer they are. When they're smaller, then they're kind of easy prey. And so we do actually have 2 little guys. They're about 8 months old. They're hanging out all the way over here. So we don't have any babies yet because it's not nesting season, or not really. Nesting season down here is May through October. So come May, the mama turtles will start coming in laying their eggs. It takes about 50 to 60 days for the eggs to hatch. And then they're supposed to make it to the ocean, swim offshore. We get them when that doesn't happen. So we've got these 2. That is Lucy. hiding in the corner, and Ethel is about 8-month-old loggerheads. So when they grow up, they'll look like Rebel and like Johnny. But when they're this little, they're kind of tiny. So everything wants to eat them. Birds, fish, sharks, you name it. So kind of give you an idea. It's about the same size as my hand. A little bit bigger. So when they're this little, easy prey. So when they're this little, they're typically offshore in the Gulf Stream out there in that floating sargassum seaweed, because yes, the seaweed is kind of food, but it's also camouflage. So they'll just kind of tuck up in there and they'll hide. If you can't eat something, if you can't find it. But the other cool thing that these loggerheads get, they're starting to get a little bit of it. But if you notice down around the back end of their shell, they start to look kind of spiky. Let's see if I can get Lucy up top at the moment. You notice along the back end of her shell, right along the top of her back, looks like she's kind of spiky. Well, that's protection as well. Because if it looks like they're spiky, you're not going to want to eat them. You're like you trying to bite into a pineapple. You don't need to do it to know that it would hurt. And so that's kind of an extra protection measure that these loggerheads have, especially when they're younger. But Rebel didn't have any spikes, because once they get big enough, they don't need that protection, so those spikes kind of disappear. But at this point, they're still little. They're still only 8 months old. But these two will stay with us till they're about 2, maybe 2.5. Wait till they're a little bit bigger. They'll be about 20, 25 pounds. And then at that point, they'll be a lot bigger, a lot healthier, a lot stronger. That way when they do get released, they'll have a much better chance of survival. So we call our Head Start program.
Very cool. And thanks for showing us the young ones. Of course, people are always keen on them. Teresa, as we wrap up, I want to ask one last question from Katie in Kansas. She wanted to know, what can kids do at home to help sea turtles, either your ones or sea turtles in general?
Well, all the same things that you do to help anything in the environment or in the ocean, because that's one thing that you can do wherever you are, because everything ends up in the ocean, whether you're in Kansas or in Florida. In Florida, of course, it's a little bit more prevalent just because we are surrounded by water. So you're used to coming to the ocean and going to the beach. So you just make sure that when you're on the ocean at the beach that you pick up all of your trash. Don't leave it behind for something to eat or get entangled in. But even if you're not near an ocean, it's going to end up there eventually. And things that people don't always think about are things like balloons. Because if you let a balloon go into the air, it has to come down eventually. A lot of the times it does that over the ocean. And floating in the water, a balloon or a plastic bag, anything like that, looks like jellyfish. So it looks like food for these turtles. So then they eat it and it makes them sick. So it's just always being aware of where things go once they're out of your sight. Because even though it may be gone from you, it's not gone forever. Just be aware of that and make sure that you use as many reusable things as possible. Because if you can get multiple use out of something, it's a lot better than just a single-use straw or plastic bottle.
Fantastic, Teresa. And I always love when we get that question. So yeah, thank you so much for taking us on the tour today and highlighting all these amazing facts about turtles. As always, we got more questions than we can possibly answer in a session, but we really, really appreciate you walking us around today and showing us your amazing facility.
You're welcome. We like being able to teach people about turtles.
Turtles are the best. I think we had 50 messages throughout the course of the thing on YouTube, just "I love turtles." No more than that. So it's worked.
Turtles are awesome. Everybody should love turtles.
They are. They're hard not to love. So do check out the Turtle Hospital on YouTube, people. Check them out on their website. You can donate to their cause. It's an organization we always like to support here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So we'll put that in the YouTube chat bar in just a minute. But for now, for everyone tuning in, thanks so much for watching. We're going to be doing over 100 programs in the month of April, featuring all these amazing facilities, places, explorers, and more. So please do keep tuning in. And for now, thanks again, Teresa, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
All right.